Howdy, y'alls. Welcome back to Anthropology 111. It's me, Dr. Edwards, here to help you out. This week we dive into Module 2, Untangling the Mess. What is culture and is not? I guess that's worded a little funny. What is culture and what is not? Be the way I'd phrase it. Anyway, so culture. Oof. This course is all about cultural anthropology, so this is a really important concept that we all want to make sure we're on the same page about. All right. I think in my, one of my Module 1 videos, I gave a kind of a brief introduction to culture. You know, I explained that it was extrasomatic, right? That it's learned. It's not something that you're born with. And that's really important because that means that culture is taught, all right? Culture is acquired from the outside. That's literally what extrasomatic means. So yeah, we like to start with thinking about culture as being learned and shared. All right. One person does not equal a culture. A group of people, all right, that have certain shared beliefs, values, practices, behaviors. That's when we're talking about culture. All right, it has to be shared. It can't just be limited to a single individual. Now, you might come across a person that is representative of another culture. That's something else, but can't think of culture just being limited to a single person. Okay. Yeah. Along with culture, we often talk about things called subcultures. All right. Use our own country here, the U.S. We might describe having a shared common American culture, all right, where we have certain shared values and beliefs and understandings. With some common ones, that you work, right? That, in order to put food on the table, you go to a job and you either sell your brain or your physical labor and you get paid money, which you then go to the store and you buy food to cook and put on the table and feed yourself and or your family, right? Now, we all might share that common thing, culture. But we also may have unique subcultures that we're a part of. And I love subcultures. They're really interesting things to explore because, I'll give you an example. Think about your hobbies, things you like to do, all right? Now, if you've read my bio stuff, I work a lot with critters and I like banging rocks together, all right? I know I'm strange, okay? Don't judge me. But yeah, so I might belong to I know I belong to some other unique subcultures. There are other folks besides me that, are into reptiles and amphibians, amateur herpetologists and whatnot. We probably share some common things, but are focused around a particular thing. That would be the subculture part, right? Usually there's unique language associated with it, all right? I used to be heavily involved in the tattooing subculture. I paid my way through my undergrad as a tattoo artist, right? And, it was this unique subculture of the larger culture. And you could readily identify another person that was a member of that subculture by the things they said and did, how they looked. Are they displaying ink? Do they call it ink? See, that's an insider linguistic term for tattoo folks. You call it ink. Tats, ink. You have special names for the different types of designs. You have black work. You have tribal work. You have realism. All sorts of different types, right? But that kind of gives you an idea, right? So in any culture, you're going to have various subcultures, all right? Just think about it like that. Now, to give you a better understanding of kind of the culture, as our text outlines, has some key characteristics, some key attributes, all right? First of all, I've identified it's shared, Okay. And think of that as, having a common worldview. Now, there'll always be differences. Always think about these things on a spectrum. Here, get my fingers up there. All right, a spectrum. And within any spectrum, you're going to have the normative, all right, kind of the middle ground, or think of the bell curve, if that helps. You're going to have the middle ground, which is what, 90+% of everybody, we all kind of see it that way. But then you're going to have the outliers. Now, it's just kind of important to keep that idea in mind, because while we talk about culture being shared, there will always be differences across a society, all right? Because people are individuals, right? We have this thing called free will. We might not agree with what everybody else thinks, okay? We might do it differently. And along with that, some of those things may be what we call norms and values. I work with wildlife extensively, and so one of the things that I specialize in is wildlife values, right? Now, we in the West tend to view wildlife as, something that's inherent to nature, to the environment. And for more urban-based folks, sometimes the closest they get to, a wild animal is the zoo, right? And it's not really a wild animal there. It's a representation of one, you might say. The other folks that are rurally based, and they might actually engage in subsistence hunting. I worked in Alaska for a while, and I used to issue Bureau of Land Management subsistence hunting permits. And these folks have a very different perspective about those same critters that you might see in the zoo. Elk and antelope and, deer, caribou, bears. And those are all North American species. Now, you can complicate it even further. There's all sorts of critters all over the world. There's all sorts of different groups of people all over the world. And they all view wildlife differently. They all have different wildlife values. If you've checked out my bio or anything, you can see some of the work I've done in West Africa. And I actually worked in a traditional medicine market, which sells wild animal parts as ingredients to traditional medicine, right? Very different wildlife values than what we are used to here in the West. But that doesn't mean they're bad, doesn't mean they're wrong, just means they're different. Remember, we got to apply that concept of cultural relativism. All right, kind of going through my list of key things I want to touch on here. Symbols. Symbols are vitally important. Think of symbols as things that we cue upon, right? Like our flag. I think this is the example your textbook gives. Why is our flag the colors that it is? Why does it matter to us, right? It's a symbol, right? It's reflecting certain things that we have, that we have value in. Symbols can be as mundane as literally writing, right? I have a fish tank and I need to order a new foam insert for my filter. You can read that, and those are symbols. When you process the symbols, it clicks. You're like, okay, that says AquaClear filter insert foam 3-pack. You might not know what a fish filter is or anything, but you can clearly read this and get an idea, right? That's because it's using symbols that you recognize. Constructions. Now, constructions are pretty much anything that a group negotiates to be true. And you see my air quotes for true. True is relative, all right? I never like to suggest there is a singular truth about anything, particularly when it comes to people. Rather, think plural truths, all right? More than one. Every person has a different perspective, right? So there's going to be plural perspectives. But these constructions, all right? I'm actually going to use a kind of a classic example here. Race. Race is a cultural construction. Lots of people like to think of race as, being biologically valid, right? Now, this is kind of interesting because in biology, race means a subspecies, right? And there are no subspecies of humans. None, right? In fact, there's more genetic variation within a group than between groups. So, biologically, there are no different human races. But we have constructed this idea that there is. Okay? In fact, for a very long time, race was used as the key concept to explain the differences between people. And it was actually the father of American anthropology, Franz Boas, that said, nope. Race is a social construct. You could pick any arbitrary trait, eye color, hair color, length of your little finger, diameter of your nostrils. You could pick any arbitrary characteristic and use it to create racial classifications. Okay? And that's what people did. The heyday was during the colonial era, and it was a way that colonizing forces subjugated other populations. Nasty stuff. But unfortunately, a very important part of understanding our world history. And in anthropology, it's hard to ignore colonialism. It's alive and well to this day. But anyway, I don't want to go off on colonialism, but the key idea here is race as a social construct, all right? I've tried explaining that biologically speaking, it doesn't exist, all right, for humans. But we've created this social idea that it does, and it has as much value as we place in it, okay? So yeah, and race is also another great example for classifications. This is another common characteristic that you'll see within culture. You tend to divide things up, categorize them, classify them, stick them in their little box based on your worldview, right, that you share with others. It's kind of like thinking about making things smaller and more manageable, all right? However, anthropology is all about the nuts and bolts, all the little details, right? As they say, the devil's in the details. So what we might see general patterns, usually, as I said before, think of a spectrum, there's always going to be variation within that. You might have a common ground, but then outliers on the outside of that. But race is another great example of how cultural groups classify things. In fact, one of the roots of, cultural anthropology is this concept of difference, right? You are not the same as me. I am not the same as you. Difference. And then you can turn towards groups and be like, okay, that group is different than me. That's not how we do things, right? It's another form of classification. Moving on. Oh, looks like somebody just sent me an email. Sorry for the beep. I touched on this in Module 1, but I want to give it another going over to help make sure it sinks home. We've got 3 concepts. We got enculturation, assimilation, and acculturation, right? Enculturation, I think as I described before, is it is the process by which you acquire culture, typically starting as an infant. Right? Doesn't matter if it's your biological family, an adopted family, whatever. Since you were a baby, you are absorbing, right, all this stuff around you. Right? You learn to speak. You learn what's right, what's wrong. You learn what's acceptable. All of that is this process that we call enculturation. We do not want to confuse enculturation with these 2 other terms. The first is assimilation. Assimilation is, you can think of kind of 2 forms of forced assimilation or non-forced assimilation. Colonization is a great example of forced assimilation. Some outside group comes in, says, nope, you can't do it that way anymore. You got to do it this way, the way we tell you. All your cultural values and norms are no longer important. These new cultural norms and values are, and you have to adhere to them. Okay, that's forceful assimilation. Okay, now you might also have kind of unforced or non-coercive assimilation, and that's more kind of the idea of diffusion, which is covered in this week's reading. That groups borrow and share things between themselves, technology, language, ideas, values, and so there can be some assimilation like that. Now, there's also acculturation. Acculturation, not inculturation, but acculturation, is when you adopt cultural norms, values, practices, beliefs that are different than what you were raised with, typically through, you move to a new place. All right. When I was 10 years old, I moved from Lawrence, Kansas to a small little village called Limouy in Switzerland. All right. I went from living like flat to living on the side of a mountain. Yes, I had to go through some serious acculturation there. People didn't speak the way that I did. I had to learn 4 new languages. My school system was completely different. I had to become acculturated to my new surroundings. Okay? But I still retained some of my own original culture, right? I still speak English, right? I didn't do away with that. I still have, certain cultural values, beliefs, practices, norms that are, originated from my enculturation process. So yeah, some things to kind of keep in mind to differentiate between those 3 terms. Let's see here. Looking at my list. Be sure to check out the videos in our Mind Edge e-learning materials. They have a lot of good stuff about culture and behavior, some great examples where you can see these other anthropologists share some insights. Culture and behavior and culture and biology. And these, there's a lot of connections, and these are actually really productive areas to study in cultural anthropology. One last thing I wanted to touch on is culture change. Now, I talked about assimilation and acculturation, so those are key things to keep in mind. Mentioned diffusion. Globalization is the big one that I want to touch on right now. Lots of folks tend to think that globalization is some new phenomenon. Sorry, I keep getting messages on my machine and they make loud dinging sounds. Sorry for that. Anyway, globalization. Lots of folks think it's something new, and I gotta tell you, it's not. Ever since there have been people in different places traveling to other places, there's been globalization. Because globalization is really just connections between people and places. Now, what has happened, what is particularly unique about modern globalization or contemporary globalization is we have some unique technology, all right, that allows us to essentially connect to a person on the other side of the world instantaneously, right? I'm connecting to you right now, and you're situated all over the U.S., all right? And I'm connecting to you. And I just think about that same idea on a global scale, all right? The internet. These things allow the transfer of ideas and concepts and beliefs. It is an extremely powerful thing. Give you kind of a strange example, actually from my doctoral dissertation. I study wildlife use, but for my dissertation, I actually used wildlife use as a lens onto the processes and interactions of globalization. particularly through two markets in Mali, West Africa. One market all about traditional medicine, the other market all about tourist goods. Okay? And I studied how these two markets, how they connected to other places, other people in places all over the world. And the networks were astounding. Everything from from local networks of supply, but global networks of demand. And what was really cool is vendors in the markets kind of have their fingers on the pulse of their clients. They know what they want, right? And they readily cater to them. Really cool stuff. That's globalization. That's people connecting to other people in different places, an exchange of things. So yeah, unique example, but hopefully it gives you a little more insight. I'll be posting some extra resources on these topics in the written portion of this week's module announcement, so be sure to check those out. Yeah, I'll do a separate video for our assignments this week, so make sure to check that out too. Of course, if you have any questions, any concerns, anything you think I can help you with, don't hesitate. All right, I am your primary resource. All right, use me, abuse me, treat me as you will. I'm here for you, and I'm dead serious about that. If you got, there are no stupid questions or anything like that. All right, so don't be shy. Don't be bashful. If you think I can help, and most likely I can, because I've been in academia, 20 plus years, and an anthropologist for 20 plus years, yeah, I am at your service. So that's where I'll leave this video. Hope you all have a good one, and check you next time. Bye.